If you saw him walking down the street in 1945, you wouldn't have looked twice. He stood 5 feet, 5 inches tall. He weighed barely 110 pounds soaking wet. He had a face that didn't just look young, it looked innocent, like a choir boy who'd gotten lost on his way to Sunday school. His voice was soft, almost shy. But if you looked into his eyes, really looked, you saw something that didn't belong on a 20-year-old's face. You saw an ancient, terrifying stillness. You saw a man who had walked through the deepest valleys of hell and somehow came out the other side. This slight, unassuming boy from Texas was Audie Murphy. By the end of the Second World War, he had personally killed, wounded, or captured an estimated 240 enemy soldiers. He received every military combat award of valor available from the U.S. Army, as well as French and Belgian decorations. He was, and remains, the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II. But the list of medals is just medal and ribbon. It doesn't tell you the story. It doesn't tell you about the freezing mud, the smell of cordite, the screams of dying friends, and the crushing weight of survival when everyone around you is gone. Today, we aren't just counting medals. We are going back to the blood-soaked fields of Europe to understand how a malnourished sharecropper's son became the ultimate soldier, and what it cost him to become a legend. This is the story of Audie Murphy, To Hell and Back. To understand the soldier, you have to understand the starvation. Audie Murphy was born in Kingston, Texas in 1925. He was one of 12 children born to sharecroppers Emmett and Josie Bell Murphy. Sharecropper is a polite way of saying destitute. The Murphys lived in a shack with dirt floors. The wind whistled through the gaps in the walls. There was no electricity, no running water. Just endless, back-breaking labor in the cotton fields under the brutal Texas sun. Audie didn't have a childhood. He had a survival training course. His father drifted in and out of their lives before finally abandoning the family altogether in 1940. That left Audie with a 5th-grade education as the primary breadwinner. He worked the fields, but more importantly, he hunted. He didn't hunt for sport. He hunted because if he missed, his brothers and sisters didn't eat. Think about the pressure on a 12-year-old boy. He had an old .22 caliber rifle. Bullets cost money they didn't have. Every single shot had to mean dinner. He learned to stalk squirrels and rabbits with the patience of a predator. He learned to shoot with terrifying precision, not because he wanted to be a marksman, but because hunger is a brutal teacher. He later said, "I became a crack shot before I ever dreamed of war." Then, in 1941, the anchor of his life, his mother, Josie Bell Murphy, died. Audie was 16. He watched her die young, worn down by poverty and endless childbirth. Her death broke something in him. It also hardened him. He had nothing left to lose. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor later that year, Audie saw a way out, a way to escape the dust and the hunger and maybe find a purpose. He tried the Marines first. They took one look at the scrawny, baby-faced kid who looked about 14 and laughed him out of the recruiting office. He was too short and too lightweight. He tried the paratroopers. Same story. They told him the parachute would probably just carry him away in the wind. Finally, desperation led him to the Army infantry. Even they were skeptical. He had to lie about his age. His sister falsified his birth date so he would appear to be 18. The Army doctor who examined him noted his stunted growth and lack of muscle and actually suggested he become a cook or a baker. He figured the kid wouldn't last a week in combat boot camp. Audie refused. He wanted to fight. He pushed himself through basic training at Camp Walters, Texas. He passed out from heat exhaustion. He was physically outmatched in hand-to-hand combat drills. But he had that Texas grit. And on the rifle range, the instructor stopped laughing. The kid from the cotton fields didn't miss. He shipped out to North Africa in early 1943, assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, the famous Rock of the Marne Division. They were about to become his new family, and he was about to watch most of them die. Audie didn't see much action in North Africa. The fighting there was wrapping up. But in July 1943, he waded ashore in the invasion of Sicily. This was his first taste of real war. It wasn't glorious. It was terrifying. He later described his first encounter with a German soldier. He was on patrol, saw 2 Italian officers escaping on horses, and shot them both dead. It was clinical, almost detached. But Sicily taught him something else. He contracted malaria, an illness that would plague him for the rest of the war, causing high fevers and shakes in the middle of battle. But more importantly, he began to develop what his comrades called a sixth sense. Audie Murphy seemed to know where the mortars were going to land before they fired. He knew where the German machine gunner was hiding before anyone else saw the muzzle flash. He was hyper-aware, a skill honed hunting squirrels in the Texas brush, now applied to hunting men. The 3rd Division pushed on to the Italian mainland, Salerno, Volturno, and then the meat grinder of Anzio. Italy wasn't a swift march. It was a brutal slog up mountainous terrain against dug-in German defenders who made the Allies pay in blood for every yard. It was cold, wet, and miserable. Audie was changing. The shy boy was becoming a ferocious, efficient killer. He was promoted to sergeant. He led patrols deep behind enemy lines. It was during this time he earned 2 Bronze Stars and recognition for his leadership. But the medals were secondary. He was fighting for the men next to him, men like Laddie Tipton, his closest friend in the unit. They were brothers, bonded by the trauma of constant near-death experiences. By the time the 3rd Division invaded southern France in August 1944, most of the original men Audie had shipped out with were dead or wounded. Audie was a survivor, and survivors carry ghosts. August 15, 1944. Audie lands near Ramatuelle, France. The resistance here is fierce. It's here that we see the pattern of Murphy's heroism. It wasn't about charging blindly. It was about calculating risks and acting with overwhelming violence when his unit was threatened. Just shortly after landing, his best friend, Laddie Tipton, was killed. A German soldier in a machine gun nest waved a white flag of surrender. Tipton stood up to take him prisoner. The German cut him down. It was a fake surrender. Audie Murphy watched his best friend die. Something snapped. In his autobiography, To Hell and Back, Murphy describes a red mist descending. He went into a blind rage. He grabbed a German machine gun, charged the nest that had killed Tipton, wiped out the crew, and then single-handedly attacked another German position on a hill above them. He killed 6, wounded 2, and took 11 prisoners in a matter of minutes. He did it because they killed his friend. This action earned him the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest Army award for valor. He was 19 years old. He received a battlefield commission to second lieutenant. He didn't want it. Being an officer meant sending men to death. He preferred being a sergeant down in the mud with his guys. But his commanders insisted. They needed his leadership. Within weeks, he was wounded by a sniper's ricochet. He spent time in a hospital, stewing, desperate to get back to his unit. Not because he loved war, but because he felt guilty being safe while they were dying. He rejoined them in January 1945, just in time for the worst fight of their lives. This is it, the moment that defines the legend. It is one of the coldest winters on record in Europe. The ground is frozen solid. The 3rd Division is tasked with clearing the Colmar Pocket,
a heavily fortified German holdout on the west bank of the Rhine River. Murphy's company is decimated. Out of an original roster of over 200 men, only 18 are fit for duty. 18 men. And Lieutenant Audie Murphy is in charge. They are ordered to hold a strategic position near the woods of Holzwehr. They are exhausted, freezing, and vastly outnumbered. At 2 p.m., the Germans counterattack. It's massive. 6 Tiger tanks, steel monsters that are virtually immune to the infantry's weapons, rumble out of the woods, supported by 2 full companies of German infantry. That's 250 men against Murphy's 18. It should have been a massacre. Murphy knew it. He ordered his remaining men to retreat back into the woods to the safety of a prepared defensive line. He stayed on to the advancing Germans to give his men a chance to escape. He was alone at the forward edge of the battle, a 5'5" target in the snow. A nearby American M10 tank destroyer was hit by a German shell and caught fire. The crew abandoned it. It was a burning coffin, filled with gasoline and ammunition that could explode at any second. And that's when Audie Murphy did the unthinkable. He grabbed his field telephone and climbed onto the burning tank destroyer. He needed the elevation to see the enemy clearly. He needed the tank's .50 caliber machine gun on the turret. The Germans were stunned. Who was this lunatic on top of a burning bomb? Murphy opened up. The .50 caliber is a devastating weapon. He sprayed the advancing German infantry, cutting them down in droves. The German tanks fired at him. Their shells hit the tank destroyer he was standing on, rocking it violently, but somehow missing Murphy himself. For an hour, 1 full hour, Audie Murphy held off an entire German army. He was simultaneously firing the machine gun and shouting coordinates into the telephone, raining American artillery down on the tanks. The heat from the burning vehicle was intense, scorching his uniform. His leg was bleeding from an earlier wound. The smoke was blinding. German infantry got within 10 yards of the tank. Murphy dropped them. He later said, "My numbed brain was busy with only one thought, to destroy. I am conscious only of the desire to kill." He stopped shooting only when he ran out of ammunition. Dazed, deafened, and bleeding, he climbed down from the burning wreck and limped back to the woods where his men were waiting, stunned that he was still alive. Moments later, the tank destroyer he had been standing on finally exploded, blowing the turret high into the air. He refused medical treatment. Instead, he reorganized his 18 men and led a counterattack against the now disoriented Germans, driving them from the field. Single-handedly, Audie Murphy had broken the back of the German attack. He had saved his company. For his actions at Holzwehr, Audie Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor. The war ended a few months later. Audie came home in June 1945. He was 20 years old. He was a national phenomenon. Life magazine put him on the cover, labeling him the most decorated soldier. There were parades, banquets. Politicians wanted to shake his hand. Everyone wanted a piece of the hero. He was the ultimate symbol of American victory, the small-town boy who beat the Nazi war machine. But the boy on the magazine cover didn't exist anymore. The real Audie Murphy was shattered. He weighed 100 pounds, he was plagued by malaria, but worse was the sickness in his mind. Today we call it post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Back then, they called it battle fatigue, or just said the soldier was nervous. There was almost no treatment. Audie couldn't sleep. When he did, the nightmares were so violent he would scream and thrash, reliving the moments Laddie Tipton died or the faces of the men he killed at Holzwehr. He couldn't handle loud noises. A car backfiring would send him diving for cover. He suffered from terrible headaches and vomiting. He was quick to anger. He got into bar fights. He was a man who had been programmed for supreme violence, and now he was expected to just be normal. To cope,
He slept with a loaded M1911 pistol under his pillow every single night. He would for the rest of his life. He became addicted to sleeping pills, a battle he fought for years. The hero was drowning in plain sight. James Cagney, the famous actor, saw Audie's photo on Life magazine and invited him to Hollywood. Cagney thought the kid had a spiritual quality. It was a strange transition. The ultimate soldier became a movie star. He starred in over 40 films, mostly westerns. He was good at it. He played the stoic, quiet type, a role he knew well. The most bizarre moment came in 1955 when he starred as himself in the movie adaptation of his autobiography, To Hell and Back. Think about that. He had to recreate the worst moments of his life on a Hollywood soundstage. He had to watch actors pretending to be his dead friends getting killed all over again. It was excruciating for him. But the movie was a massive hit. It was Universal Studios' highest-grossing film until Jaws 20 years later. Despite the fame and money, the darkness never left him. He gambled away fortunes. His marriages struggled under the weight of his trauma. But in his pain, he found a new way to serve. Audie broke the taboo. He started talking publicly about his battle fatigue. In an era when men were supposed to suffer in silence, the toughest soldier of them all admitted that he was broken. He advocated for better government medical care for Korean War and Vietnam War veterans suffering from mental health issues. He was trying to save the next generation from the hell he lived in every day. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy was a passenger on a private plane flying through thick fog and rain near Roanoke, Virginia. The plane crashed into the side of Brush Mountain. Everyone aboard was killed. Audie Murphy was 45 years old. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. His gravesite is one of the most visited in the entire cemetery, second only to President John F. Kennedy. When you look at Audie Murphy's life, it's easy to be blinded by the medals. It's easy to see a hero. But if you just see the hero, you miss the point. Audie Murphy wasn't Captain America. He was a frightened, impoverished kid from Texas who loved his friends more than he feared death. He did extraordinary things because the situation demanded it, and because he refused to let the men next to him down. The real story of Audie Murphy isn't about how many men he killed. It's about how much of himself he sacrificed in the process. He carried the weight of the free world on his small shoulders, and he paid the price for it every single day until he died. He went to hell and back for us. The least we can do is remember the cost of the ticket.